Jack, Luke, thanks for joining us. You guys missed them fighting over who gets to sit next to me and who doesn't. I try not to take it personally. I want to start with a question for both of you. Luke, you run a company that is one of the largest of its kind, a $50, $60 billion company that's in the business of getting things to Americans' homes. The sort of last mile logistics is the not fun way of putting it. Jack, you sit on the other side of that, which is the first touch point for most Americans, buying things and helping companies build products that take people's money. And so between the two of you, it seems that we're very well situated to sort of get a sense of where the consumer is and how they're spending, how they're thinking about spending, whether they're pulling back in certain areas. Luke, I'll start with you. What sort of data or insights can you share about areas of strength, areas of weakness for the consumer in the US today?
Yeah, I mean, so thank you for having me and the introduction. Yeah, so Link Logistics, we are one of the largest owners of warehouses in the country. We have 9,000 businesses, and around 4 to 5% of US GDP flows through our customers that are in our spaces. So I think we do have, maybe not the top of the funnel, but we have a pretty good point of what we're seeing. And I think what I'd use is balanced optimism today. And I think even with everything that's going on, what we're seeing from small business leasing volume, small business needing more space, inventory levels, and even customer anecdotes and sentiment, it's pretty good. Where we're seeing the biggest pockets of strength, if you think of areas that have a lot of manufacturing growth or anything around AI and data centers, Dallas, anything in the Southeast, go Charlotte down through Florida, we're seeing really good strength across that, which actually would be counterintuitive to what, if you just watched headlines, you'd probably think there's a real pullback. We aren't seeing that yet.
Jack, from where you sit, maybe a little more consumer focused in terms of the data you have, what's your perspective?
For the folks who haven't heard of Airwallex, we are a fintech global payments business born out of Melbourne 10 years ago. We experienced firsthand as small business owners to making payments globally, leveraging the traditional SWIFT or correspondent banking network that's slow, that's expensive, inefficient. And we have the mission to build the best global payments and banking platform to help small businesses all the way to enterprises to expand globally to receive payment, process payment, hold payment, moving money at the sort of speed of data without the constraint of the traditional financial infrastructure. So Airwallex have processed $300 billion this year, and about sort of $100 billion is processed for U.S. businesses, and we're servicing about 46,000 U.S. businesses, and we help them not only paying vendors globally, also help them to instantly set up bank account in over 70 countries. So think about traditionally that a kind of a global business that's setting our banking relationship with the like of Citi or HSBC for a couple of years to set up banking relationship globally. Now we give the capability to small businesses to allow them to do that in a matter of days. So that can instantly expanding to new jurisdictions around the world, receiving the payments, receiving the revenue, help them to basically competing with more efficiency and expanding that business globally. What we have seen is there's more important than ever to have our infrastructure to supporting entrepreneurs and businesses, because if you're looking at 20 years ago, people think about a global business, they think about Coca-Cola and Nestle. Nowadays, any sort of mom and dad shop selling on Amazon or eBay is a global business. Any entrepreneurs out of the Silicon Valley building an AR startup is a global business, because they need to not only process the payment, but they also need to actually operate globally from day one as they have customers globally. So we're really here to kind of help U.S. entrepreneurs and small businesses to operate more efficiently and win globally.
Right, and I think your scale gives you that perspective. So just to sort of re-up that question and that idea, when you look at how money is flowing and where it is flowing, are there particular sectors from your customer base, right, the people who are actually using these points of sale or using these platforms, that you see as strong or durable, even as the U.S. and the U.S. consumers sort of weathered and navigated a lot of uncertainty over the 6 months? Are there pockets of strength? Are there pockets where people are pulling back?
We definitely see a lot of interesting dynamics from a trade point of view as we see payments continue to shift into more emerging markets, that a lot of growth out there. And we also see payments into China is a lot less, and a lot of those payments are shipped to like Mexico, Indonesia, the Middle East, etc. So, we're here to kind of building the best infrastructure for all these businesses around the world. We kind of wanted to make sure that they can navigating the complexity of the geopolitics and also the kind of the trade shift.
Luke, I want to talk more about your infrastructure in a second, but Luke, I want to go and turn, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, to AI for a second, which is suffusing and permeating everything we're doing. And we've had a lot of conversations here about how it's changing physical plant, whether that's factories or warehouses. You guys have a lot of warehouses. Can you talk me through a little bit about how you are thinking about deploying AI and whether there are, actually realizable cost savings that you're already seeing through those deployments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes. It's being deployed at scale at Link and as well as our customers. I think the easiest one to think about is just think about network planning. Like Amazon had this incredible ability to put warehouses in the right spot. I mean, a great stat in 2017, Amazon had a facility within an hour of 20% of the US population. Mm-hmm. As of today, that's 89.4%. They have a facility within an hour. So they have network planned that out, and that's, whether you have Sinonge or very large models to do that, that is now available to anyone. So when you think of small businesses or even regional players, they can lay that out, which cuts mileage costs and optimizes supply chain, which I think ultimately benefits the consumer, the economy. It makes us more efficient. So we're seeing that dramatically. In physical, where's AI coming in? Robotics has been accelerating, automation of facilities, we're seeing that start to pick back up. It's wildly expensive. But where we have really tried to position ourselves is we want to own the real estate in that path of travel. Where are these great nodes that actually minimize costs for shipping to your door, to a store? And then even think about things like Boeing, how they lay out their plants around the country. They cannot have a $300 million plane sitting at the end of a supply chain with a missing part. So I think what AI has done is exacerbated the ability or accessibility to technology and inventory management, which I think ultimately over time you're going to see this flow through to the benefit of the economy, the consumer, and their margins.
I'm glad you ended on margins there because I'm not a technology reporter, I'm a financial reporter, I'm really an M&A reporter. And so when I think about businesses like yours, really there are two things that differentiate big from small, successful from failure, and that's scale and leverage. And M&A is sort of intrinsic to your business model. You need to be bigger. Your company itself is a roll-up of several smaller REITs. Yeah. And so when you look out of the landscape, commercial real estate has suffered a lot. There's a lot of chop, there's a lot of uncertainty. Do you see opportunities for deal making? Do you see opportunities to continue to acquire and grow?
Yeah, I think commercial real estate is a huge, as you know, an enormous bucket. I think there's a big difference between a C office building and a great warehouse. I believe there is. Yes, there is.
Certainly visually there is.
Look, the 3 or 4 biggest, or the 10 biggest owners of warehouses, we probably collectively own 12% of the stock. It's wildly fragmented. I think there's a big opportunity to buy larger portfolios, smaller portfolios. We're part of the Blackstone network, so we have access to capital throughout the cycle. But scale is your friend. Once you build a business that can operate at scale, the insights and data and access that we have is pretty unique.
How much capital do you plan on deploying towards M&A or towards acquisitions this year?
We don't have a specific number. It'll be multiple billions of dollars, I would say. Last year we bought $2 billion. It'll be multiple billions this year. But it could be way more than that too.
Jack, there's been a lot of chatter in the fintech and the payment space about M&A, possible combinations, some ludicrous ones, PayPal, Stripe, but some not so much. How do you think about M&A as a privately held company, but as a fast-growing, highly valued privately held company?
Yeah, in the last decade, Airwallex built the best money movement and financial infrastructure around the world from the ground up. So we regulated in over 60 to 70 markets around the world, have 85 payments and licenses around the world. And a lot of the central bank were not able to, not issue new licenses anymore. So we had to do a lot of acquisitions in jurisdictions like, Mexico, in Indonesia,
This is
Vietnam.
similar to what a lot of neobanks have had to do to get their foot in the door.
I think neobanks are generally more focused on opening sort of bigger markets like United States or UK or Europe. That's kind of where you see most of the neobanks, like the Chimes, the Firm, or the kind of Revolut of the world probably have a bigger, larger footprint across UK, Europe, and some APAC markets. But I don't think anyone have gone to the extent of penetrating more than 120 countries around the world. Because we're facilitating global money movement, so it's very important that we're not only supporting the G10 currencies, the big economy, but it's also facilitating transactions between the small economy emerging market and the G10 economy as well.
So if historically that's how you've been approaching M&A, has that shifted now that you've really started to achieve that penetration? Is there a different way you're thinking about deal making and about acquiring scale, whether that's technology or talent or even verticals that you're not currently operating in? You just launched a point of sale product.
Yeah, I think our mission is to help entrepreneurs and business owners to expand their business in every corner of the world. So that's kind of a very clear mission we set over a decade, and we did really hard work to be regulated by the central bank everywhere. Getting a license in Japan takes 7 years. Getting a license in Mexico, the M&A took 3 years, and getting licenses in all across 50 states in the United States took about 6 years. So I think it's important for us to basically reach every corner of the world. And we continue to expand into Middle East, to Latin America as the trade shift continue to go to that direction. So we will see M&A will continue to play an important role as we, building the best financial infrastructure in the world.
I'm sure that every coverage banker on the planet is constantly calling you, trying to discern whether you or when you plan to go public. What is your sort of thinking and your sense around an IPO and the time frame with which you'd like to do that?
Airwallex is, been compounding kind of more than 100% year on year for the first 9 years since we started the business in
terms of your post-money valuation?
Sorry?
In terms of post-money valuation?
No, in terms of the revenue that we generate, right? So we raised a new round last year, $8 billion valuation, led by some of the best US investors like T. Rowe and Addition. And we continue to looking at raise money in, as a sort of in the private markets, and there's no urgency for us to tap in the public market. We're going to be doing $2 billion in revenue this year and still growing 85% year on year. And we're likely to process over $1 trillion in payments next year. So with our scale, we think we're in a very good position. The company is also profitable, right? So at sort of scale, and we don't feel the urgency to go public anytime soon.
One thing about your shareholder base that I do want to talk to you a little bit about and give you a chance to sort of walk this room through. There's been a lot of concern from some vocal parties about your shareholding base, about your exposure to China, about your relationships with certain Chinese investors. Can you sort of walk us through whether you view that as a valid problem or if you have sort of broader thoughts on what people have been saying about you?
Yeah, I mean, we started the company in 2015 in Melbourne, right? So at that time, Sequoia China and Sequoia US are one company, and Sequoia China invested all the best companies in Australia, like Canva, like Airwallex, like CultureAmp. And I think that is more of a historical issue, and then become a problem that now Sequoia China and Sequoia US split it because Australia is part of the coverage of Sequoia China. And none of those Chinese investors are on our board or have any control of the company, and they just a passive financial investor. So we think, in the sort of the current sort of geopolitical landscape, we just need to kind of managing that risk. But also, it's more importantly, we're here to help American businesses, American entrepreneurs to expand globally. And you can't also ignore China as a region. We have a lot of payments like Amazon, Shopify, all these big eBay, all these big platforms. I need to make payments into China, and Airwallex is here to support it. That's why we did an M&A a couple of years ago to secure a license. So we become the second company after PayPal as a foreign company to operating as a regulated entity in China. And we have very strong data sovereignty in different jurisdictions around the world, and we take data security and all the laws and regulations extremely seriously, and we regulate it in all the 50 states in the United States. So that's kind of how we operating as a global payment platform.
I want to change gears and Luke, sort of press you on your business a little bit, because maybe this is my naivete, but it seems to me that you are doubly exposed to a downturn from the consumer and a corresponding downturn in small business spend. When you think about where we sit right now, a lot of uncertainty around supply chain, around tariffs, around the war, how are you preparing your business and sort of girding up for the possibility that we enter some sort of sustained downturn? because you operate fixed assets that you can't easily hive off and sell if there aren't buyers.
Yeah. Well, I'd challenge that we're just linked to I think consumption is a big part of that. Our fastest growing part of our business right now and tenant base is really around this reindustrialization and huge CapEx spend that's happening around the country. And it's data centers, or it's power and infrastructure, or it's defense spending, or it's advanced manufacturing. All of this has downstream impacts to warehouse demand. So our fastest growing tenant base at the moment is anything around that. And, you know,
Isn't that a risk in and of itself, though? I mean, to press you a little bit, I'm sure if Semafor existed in 1995, there'd be a fiber executive or a fiber adjacent executive sitting on stage with me saying the same thing. If you are so exposed and so dependent on this really two major companies, that's OpenAI and Anthropic, and to a degree the big tech companies, driving so much of that data center build out, if they collapse, does that impact your business arguably worse than a consumer downturn?
So I guess but it's all power and infrastructure. So go further down the supply chain. Those that are building switch gear as automation goes into warehouses, or as manufacturing sort of comes back to the US. So
do you believe that the onshoring phenomenon that started under this, because you can't plan in 2-year increments, you're planning in 10-year increments.
And neither do our customers. Our customers, you're exactly right. They're planning 10-year supply chain change. So when everyone's like, we're going to come back to the US, it's like a decade to slowly move at a time.
And do you really think that companies, I'll pick on Apple, right, which dressed up their US CapEx, their planned US CapEx as a new sort of phenomenon to present to the president. Are companies, they have to walk the walk with you. Are they actually deploying capital here and building the scaffolding for the onshoring of industrialization? Or is it just something they can say in this town to the president?
I think, no, I think you are. It's probably not quite to the level of what is being reported or being redressed up, but we are seeing it. You are seeing, go to Columbus. Let me tour you Columbus and you'll see the build out that's happening around Columbus.
You can take me out. I'd happily check it.
Go around, go Buckeyes. I lived in Cleveland, so I'm an Ohio State person. But you know, go to Dallas. I go to South Dallas. Like, we build all these warehouses and they're now full. So look, I don't want to diminish, if the consumer slows materially and there's big unemployment problems, that will hurt all businesses, ours included, and our customers. But we're seeing that reindustrialization. The other one is, which I think it helps provide a ballast for our business, is there is this general shift to e-commerce. It hasn't ended. In a decade, 50% of the US workforce will have grown up with Amazon Prime. Not learnt it, grew up with it. My 19-year-old son, he just believes he should be able to get things delivered the next day. Like, that is the way shopping works.
Yeah.
So even if you believe that the consumption pie doesn't grow that fast, there's more of a skew to online, which helps our warehouse. And no customer of ours is more than 3% of our warehouse. So we're very diverse. We are the US economy. There are some good things that are happening in the US economy that is real and touching real estate and local markets right now today.
We could talk about this probably for another hour, but unfortunately we are at time, so we're gonna have to leave it there. Jack, Luke, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you so much.
Thanks, Rohan.